It was the kind of cold that sinks deep into your bones, but that night, something inside me went even colder. I watched, almost in slow motion, as Chloe's wedding ring, the one I'd slipped onto her finger 4 years ago, spun across the polished hardwood floor of our Beacon Hill apartment. She'd just thrown it at my chest, not with anger, but with this chilling finality. "I'm not your wife tonight," she'd said, her voice cutting through the sudden silence. And then, she was gone, the click-clack of her heels echoing down the hallway like a countdown to something I couldn't quite grasp yet. Most guys, I think, would have lost it right then. Panicked, maybe screamed, or blown up her phone for hours, begging her to come back, to explain. Me? I just stood there for a minute, maybe two, feeling this weird, detached clarity wash over me. I bent down, picked up the ring, it felt small, strangely insignificant in my palm, and placed it deliberately on the kitchen counter, right under the brightest light. I took 3 photos, different angles. Then I opened a new folder on my phone, titled it Evidence, and saved them there. Because here's the thing no one tells you about marriage, about life, really, the moment someone throws away the symbol of your commitment and announces they're single, they've just handed you the entire case. I was 29, she was 27. We'd been married for 4 years, and I truly thought I had life figured out. We met in college in Boston, got engaged young, did the whole young professional in Beacon Hill thing. Our apartment had exposed brick, and we had this routine of Sunday farmers markets. I worked in project management for a tech company, she was in marketing at a downtown startup. From the outside, our lives looked perfect, like an Instagram dream. Pasta nights, podcast Sundays, the kind of relationship where friends commented, goals. But about 8 weeks before that Friday night, things had started to shift. Subtly at first, then more obviously. She was out more often, always with her girlfriends from work, always coming home well after midnight, smelling like vodka and club smoke. I'm not the jealous type, never have been, so I didn't make a big deal of it. When I'd ask how her night was, I'd get one-word answers, followed by her heading straight for the shower. Her phone, which had always been open, suddenly had a passcode I didn't know. Then, the deleted message threads. Right in front of me sometimes, not even bothering to hide it anymore. I told myself it was a phase, that maybe she just needed space. Marriage has seasons, right? This was just a rough one. Looking back, I just wonder how many bright red flags a person needs to see before they finally stop making excuses for the person they love. I was wrong, so wrong. That Friday, I made dinner like usual, carbonara, garlic bread, the whole thing. 7 o'clock came and went, no text. 8 o'clock, still nothing. I ate alone, put her plate in the fridge, and settled in to watch something mindless on Netflix. She finally walked in at 7:12 p.m. I know the exact time because I glanced at my watch when I heard the door. She wasn't stumbling drunk. She was stone-cold sober, and that, somehow, was even more terrifying. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was just some guy she was forced to share space with. I asked if she wanted me to heat up her food, and she laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was sharp, brittle. "I'm 27 years old, Noah, and I'm living like I'm 40, she said, dropping her bag on the couch with a thud. "I'm tired of playing house. I'm tired of pretending this is enough. I'm tired of you acting like we're some perfect little unit when I feel like I'm disappearing." I stayed calm. I asked her what she meant, told her we could talk through whatever she was feeling. She cut me off. Said there was nothing to talk through, that she didn't want another one of my reasonable conversations where I fixed everything with logic. That's when she did it. She yanked off her wedding ring, held it up between us like it was evidence of some crime I'd committed, and said the words I'll never forget. "This ring is a symbol of me disappearing." She threw it hard, right at my chest. It hit, then fell, and the sound of it hitting the floor was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. "I'm single tonight," she announced, grabbing her purse again. Told me not to wait up, not to call, not to do anything. And then she was gone. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, just staring at the closed door. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt this strange, almost unsettling clarity, like someone had just turned on all the lights in a dark room. She had just told me, in front of God, in our apartment, through her own choices, that she considered herself single. Not separated, not needing space, single. I picked up the ring. Instead of putting it somewhere sentimental, I placed it on the kitchen counter like a piece of evidence at a crime scene. Then I did what any guy with half a brain would do in 2024. I started documenting. I opened my notes app and wrote down a timeline, her arrival time, her exact words as best as I could remember, the fact that she threw the ring, that she left after declaring herself single. I checked our phone plan, toggled on call recording permissions for Massachusetts, and made sure my cloud backup was active. Then I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. 20 minutes later, I tried again. Voicemail. On the 5th try, around 9:30, she picked up. I could hear everything. The thumping bass, people shouting over music, guys laughing in the background. She yelled, asking what I wanted, and I asked where she was and if she was safe. She laughed, a loud, artificial sound, and told me she was at a club, having fun, something I wouldn't understand. I heard a male voice close to her say something I couldn't make out. She giggled, then told me again, "I'm not your wife tonight, Noah. I'm doing whatever I want with whoever I want." Then she hung up. I saved the call log, took a screenshot, backed it up. Then I sat down on the couch and just breathed. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't a rough patch. This was a unilateral decision to blow up our marriage. And she had, quite literally, documented it herself. Around 10:15, my phone buzzed. It was a photo. She was at some rooftop bar, sitting between two guys I'd never seen before, her arm around one of them, drink in hand, a huge, triumphant smile on her face. The caption read, "Bet you wish you were more fun." I stared at that photo for a long time, not because it hurt, it did, but that wasn't the dominant feeling. It was because I realized she had just handed me everything I'd need. I took screenshots, backed them up to 3 different places, and created a folder in my email with timestamps. I didn't respond to the photo. I didn't react. I didn't give her anything to use later. I just saved it. By 11 p.m., I was at my kitchen table, laptop open, researching divorce attorneys in Boston. I found one with excellent reviews, specializing in high-conflict cases, known for moving fast. At 11:58 p.m., I called his emergency line. He picked up on the 3rd ring, sounded completely alert, and I gave him the shortest version I could. I told him my wife had thrown her wedding ring at me, declared herself single, left, sent me a photo with other men, and stated she was doing whatever she wanted. I explained I had recordings, screenshots, and timestamps for everything. There was a pause. Then he said something that made my whole body relax. "She just gave you the entire case," he confirmed, telling me not to delete anything, not to contact her unless she contacted me first, and to meet him at his office Monday morning at 8. I hung up and realized I wasn't scared anymore. I was just done. She thought this was punishment, thought she could go out and live her single fantasy, and come home to me, waiting like a scolded kid, ready to apologize for being boring. But when she walked back through that door, the papers would already be in motion. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in 2 months. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I was doing. She came home Sunday morning. I heard her key in the lock around 10:30, heard her drop her bag in the hallway, heard her footsteps slow when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, laptop open. She looked rough, mascara smudged, hair messy, wearing the same dress from Friday night. She tried to smile, that apologetic, small smile, like we'd just had some silly fight about dishes. She asked if we could talk, her voice small and careful. I looked up at her and just told her to check her email. Her face went from confused to something else as she pulled out her phone and scrolled. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened slightly, and she looked at me like I'd just set the apartment on fire. She held up her phone, asking, "What the hell is this?" saying I was filing for divorce. I took a sip of my coffee. "You threw your ring at me, Chloe," I reminded her calmly. "You told me you were single. I'm simply taking you at your word." She started pacing, her hands shaking, saying it was just one night, that she was angry and didn't mean it like that. I stayed calm. "You sent me a photo with two guys and a caption mocking me. You told me on a recorded line you were doing whatever you wanted with whoever you wanted." She stopped pacing. Her voice went sharp. "You recorded me? That's controlling, Noah. This is exactly why I needed space." I shook my head. "There's a difference between documenting and controlling, Chloe." She tried another angle, sitting down across from me, reaching for my hand. I pulled it back. She said she'd made a mistake, that she was feeling trapped and acted out, but that she loved me and didn't want this. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing. "You didn't act out," I told her. "You made a series of choices. Throwing away your ring. Declaring yourself single. Going out with other men. Sending me proof." She was crying harder now, asking if one bad night meant I was throwing away 4 years. Asking if I didn't even want to try. I stood up, poured the rest of my coffee in the sink, and asked her, "Who threw away 4 years, Chloe?" "You threw the ring." Saturday morning at 8 a.m., I'd met with Mr. Wallace. Mid-50s, sharp suit, the kind of guy who'd cleared his weekend schedule because he recognized urgency when he heard it. I showed him everything, the photos of the ring, the timeline, the call recording, the text message with the photo, her exact words. He spread it all out on his desk like he was building a case for trial, which, I guess, he was. He told me it was solid evidence, tapping the photo she'd sent me. He explained that she'd declared herself single and documented her own behavior, all in writing. He asked about assets. The apartment lease was in my name. I'd paid the entire deposit and all utilities from day one. Our bank accounts were joint, but I'd been the primary earner. No kids, no shared property beyond furniture. He nodded, taking notes, and told me we'd have the petition ready to file electronically first thing Monday morning. We needed to get ahead of this before she had time to strategize. The groundwork was done by Saturday afternoon. I felt this weird calm, like I was finally doing something instead of just absorbing whatever she threw at me. So, on Sunday, after she cried and yelled and tried every angle, I told her the reality. The apartment lease was in my name, and she needed to pack her things. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language, asking where she was supposed to go. I shrugged. "You wanted independence, Chloe. You wanted to be single." She tried to argue, said she had rights, said I couldn't just force her out. I pulled up the lease on my laptop, showed her my name, showed her the documentation that I'd paid every deposit, every utility setup, everything. I told her she could stay with friends, with her sister. She could figure it out. But she wasn't staying here. She called me every name she could think of, told me I was cruel, told me I was punishing her, told me this wasn't the man she married. I just stood there and waited until she ran out of words. Then I said the thing I'd been thinking since Friday night: the man you married would have waited up, would have forgiven you, would have let you walk all over him. But that man doesn't exist anymore. She packed 2 bags, crying the whole time, slamming drawers, mumbling about how I'd regret this. I changed the door code the second she left, sent an email to the building manager with a heads up about the situation, and spent the rest of Sunday taking down our wedding photos. Every frame, every picture of us smiling on some beach or at some friend's party, I packed them into a box and put them in the storage closet. The apartment felt bigger without them, cleaner, like I could finally breathe. Monday morning, Mr. Wallace filed the petition electronically through Massachusetts court system. By Monday afternoon, it was officially in the system. And by Wednesday morning, she got served at her office. I know because her sister called me screaming about it, yelling about how humiliating it was to have her served at work. I kept my voice level and told her to have my wife contact my attorney. Then I hung up. I blocked her sister, blocked her mom, blocked everyone from her side who I knew would start the guilt campaign. My phone blew up for an hour. Texts coming in from numbers I didn't recognize. People telling me I was making a huge mistake, that I was being rash, that marriage is about forgiveness. I deleted every single one. Have you ever noticed how people who've never been in your situation always have the strongest opinions about what you should do? Around 4 p.m. that Wednesday, she showed up in the lobby of my building. The front desk guy called me, asked if I wanted him to send her up. I said no and told him to let her know I wasn't available. But I went down anyway, because I knew she wouldn't leave until she'd said whatever she came to say. She was standing by the elevators, and she'd clearly put effort in. Hair done, makeup perfect, wearing the dress I'd always said I liked. She saw me, and her whole face lit up like this was going to work. She walked toward me and begged for just 5 minutes. I crossed my arms and told her to say what she needed to say. She took a breath, and I could see her trying to organize her thoughts, trying to find the right words that would crack me. She said she'd been horrible, that she knew it and wasn't denying it, but that it was one night of stupidity and I was ready to end everything. I didn't move. It wasn't one night, Chloe, I told her. It was 8 weeks of distance, deleted messages, late nights, and then one night where you made it official. She reached for my hand again. I stepped back. She said she was scared. Scared of losing me. Scared of being alone. Scared she'd just destroyed the best thing in her life. And now the tears were real. I looked at her, and for a second, I almost felt something. Almost. You can't throw a grenade and then ask to put the pieces back, I said. She was sobbing now, asking if that was it. If 4 years were just gone like that. I nodded. It's just like that. I went back upstairs. She didn't follow. I watched from my window as she stood in the lobby for another 10 minutes, then finally walked out to the street and got in an Uber. My phone buzzed one more time, a text from her saying I was going to regret this. I deleted it, blocked her number, and sat down on my couch. The apartment was silent, completely silent, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel suffocating. It felt like mine. Thursday, I got a call from Mr. Wallace telling me she'd lawyered up and was asking for spousal support and half the apartment's value. I wasn't surprised and asked if she could actually get it. He chuckled. She can ask, Noah, but we have documentation of abandonment, her declaration of being single, and the lease is in your name with proof of your sole financial contribution. He told me we had a preliminary hearing in 6 weeks, and that I should prepare for her to come in playing the victim. I told him I was ready. Because I was. She thought she could blow up our marriage on Friday, party all weekend, and then waltz back in with tears and apologies, and I'd just fold. But she forgot one thing. I'm the guy who documents everything. The preliminary hearing was set for a Thursday morning 6 weeks later. I showed up in a suit, Mr. Wallace beside me, a folder full of printed evidence because, he said, judges still like paper. She walked in 10 minutes late with her attorney, some guy in his 30s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She dressed conservatively, minimal makeup, hair pulled back, the whole wronged wife aesthetic. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, and she wouldn't look at me, just kept whispering to her lawyer and dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The judge was a woman in her 50s, non-nonsense expression, and she went through the preliminaries fast. Her attorney stood up first and painted me as cold and impulsive. Said I'd filed for divorce after one argument, that I'd kicked my wife out of her home with nowhere to go, that I'd refused all attempts at reconciliation. He made it sound like I'd abandoned her, not the other way around. Then Mr. Wallace stood up and dropped the evidence like he was laying cards on a table. He showed the photos of the ring on the floor, played the audio of her phone call from the club where she declared herself single, showed the text message with the photo of her between 2 men with the caption mocking me. Her attorney tried to object, said the recording was obtained without consent, but Mr. Wallace had already checked Massachusetts' one-party consent law. The judge looked at the photo for a long time, then looked at my wife, then asked her directly if she'd sent that message. My wife nodded, barely audible, and said she had, but that she was drunk and angry and didn't mean it. The judge asked what she did mean by telling her husband she was single and going out with other men. My wife started crying, said she'd felt suffocated in the marriage, that she'd needed space, and made a terrible mistake. The judge didn't look sympathetic. She just looked tired. She asked me if I had any intention of reconciling. I said, no, that trust, once broken this completely, couldn't be repaired. The judge granted temporary orders. I kept the apartment. Joint accounts were frozen pending asset division. No spousal support until the final hearing, and we were both ordered to attend one session of mediation before any trial. My wife's attorney tried to argue for temporary support, said she had nowhere to live. Mr. Wallace countered that she'd voluntarily left the marital home after declaring herself single and had family in the area. The judge sided with us. Outside the courtroom, my wife tried to approach me. Mr. Wallace stepped between us and reminded her all communication had to go through attorneys. She looked at me over his shoulder, her eyes red, and asked if I really felt nothing. I didn't answer, just walked away. The next week, she started a social media campaign, subtle at first. Posts about heartbreak, about being blindsided, about people showing their true colors. Her friends flooded the comments with support, calling me every name you can imagine. I didn't respond. Didn't engage, just screenshot everything and sent it to Mr. Wallace in case it became relevant. My friends reached out asking what really happened, and I gave them the short version. She threw her ring, declared herself single, went out with other guys, sent me proof, and I filed. Most of them weren't surprised. A few had seen the changes in her over the past months, the way she'd pull away at gatherings, or spend the whole time on her phone. One of my buddies told me he'd seen her at a bar a few weeks before the blow-up, getting very close with some guy while I was supposedly at home working late. I wished he'd told me then, but I understood why he hadn't. Nobody wants to be the messenger in situations like that. The mediation session was scheduled for 3 weeks after the hearing, in a conference room downtown. It was me, Mr. Wallace, her attorney, and a mediator who looked like she'd been doing this for decades. The mediator explained the process, said this was our chance to resolve things without going to trial, that it would be cheaper and faster for both of us. My wife's attorney started with their demands. She wanted half the apartment's appreciated value since we'd been married. She wanted half of my retirement account contributions during the marriage, and she wanted me to cover her moving expenses and first month's rent somewhere new. Mr. Wallace countered with my offer. I'd give her a lump sum payment of $15,000, roughly equivalent to her financial contributions to shared expenses during the marriage, in exchange for her signing off on everything else with no further claims. Her attorney called it inadequate. Mr. Wallace pointed out that she'd abandoned the marriage, that she had no legal claim to property at least before marriage, and that her behavior was documented extensively. The mediator asked if we could take a break, and my wife's attorney took her into the hallway. Mr. Wallace told me to stay firm, that they were posturing, that they knew they didn't have much leverage. When they came back, my wife asked if she could speak to me directly. The mediator said it was allowed if both attorneys agreed. Mr. Wallace looked at me. I nodded, and he said, "Fine." Her attorney looked annoyed, but didn't object. She looked across the table at me, and her voice was shaking. "Is there any chance?" she asked. "Any chance at all that we could work this out?" I'd known this was coming, had prepared for it. But hearing her actually say it still felt strange. I looked at her, at this person I'd spent 4 years with, who I'd planned a future with, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. "No," I said, and my voice was steady. She closed her eyes like I'd hit her, and when she opened them again, they were filled with anger instead of sadness. "I hate you," she said, loud enough that the mediator shifted uncomfortably, telling me she hated me for giving up, for being so cold, for not even trying. I didn't react. Just sat there, waiting for her to finish. Okay, I said. That makes this easier. Her attorney put a hand on her arm, whispered something, and she sat back in her chair, breathing hard. The mediator asked if we needed another break, but I said, no, I wanted to finish this. My wife's attorney conferred with her for a few minutes, then came back with a counter, $25,000, and I cover her attorney fees. Mr. Wallace looked at me. I shook my head. We'd already agreed on our maximum, and this was above it. Mr. Wallace told them the offer was $15,000. Take it or leave it, and if they wanted to go to trial, we'd be happy to let a judge see all the evidence in open court. That got their attention. Her attorney asked for a moment, took my wife outside again, and when they came back, she looked defeated. She agreed to the terms. We signed the settlement agreement right there. The mediator witnessed it, and it was done. The divorce would be finalized in 60 days, standard waiting period in Massachusetts, but the property division was settled. I wrote her a check for $15,000. She signed a release of all claims, and we were legally separated. As we were packing up, she stopped at the door and looked back at me one last time. She didn't say anything, just looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face, or maybe trying to understand how we'd gotten here. Then she left. Mr. Wallace shook my hand and told me I'd handled it perfectly. That most guys in my position would have caved to the emotional manipulation. I thanked him, paid his retainer balance, and walked out into the afternoon sun feeling lighter than I had in months. 60 days later, I got the email from the court. Dissolution finalized. Marriage legally ended. I was sitting at my desk at work when it came through, and I just stared at it for a minute. For years over, reduced to a PDF attachment. I forwarded it to my personal email for records, then got back to work. That weekend, I rearranged the entire apartment, moved furniture, bought new sheets, hung different art. I wanted the space to feel like mine, not ours, not a museum of something dead. I started running again, something I'd stopped doing when we got married because she said I spent too much time on it. I took a weekend trip to Portland, just me. No plan, no schedule. I got a promotion 3 months later, the kind I'd been working toward, but had been too distracted to fully pursue. My life started feeling like my own again, like I was living it instead of performing it. People asked if I was dating, and I said, no, not yet. That I needed time to remember who I was outside of being someone's husband. The truth was, I didn't miss her. I missed the idea of stability, the idea of partnership, but I didn't miss her specifically. And that told me everything I needed to know about whether I'd made the right choice. When someone shows you through their actions that they don't value what you've built together, believing them and responding accordingly isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. What do you think you would have done in my situation?